welcome to Cliff Kuehl's Notes. I have Philip Barton here talking to us all the way from Australia over Skype. He is the president of the Gold Standard Institute, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about gold, the gold standard, as well as Bitcoin. So thank you very much, Philip, for being here. The first question I really want to ask is, can you tell us a little bit about the Gold Standard Institute, as well as your role that you play at the Gold Standard Institute?
Okay. The Gold Standard Institute was formed in early 2009, and its mandate is the promotion of an unadulterated gold standard. And what we mean by that is a freely circulating gold and silver, as in honest money. And by freely circulating, I mean unregulated by governments. We wholeheartedly support a free market, but we go beyond most, way beyond most, by insisting that a free market in money is even more fundamentally important than a free market in goods and services. Most people understand that the needs of the consumer and the producer are best served by a free market in such things as whether you're selling corn or second-hand cars or pancakes. It's really not important. The free market operates best and provides the best deal for both parties. That applies even more so to the money that sits at the base of every single transaction. At the moment, all those transactions are tainted by government control of monetary policy, by money supply, and most importantly, by interest rates.
Right.
That shouldn't be. And, you know, it seems to some people when they first hear it that it's a fairly quixotic sort of goal or purpose, but the fact is that this was an intellectual argument that raged from Aristotle in the 4th century BC to Nicola Oresme in the 14th century AD.
Wow.
And the argument was won by the government by the simple expedient of separating heads from torsos of those who persisted in private meeting.
Oh my goodness.
It was a very convincing argument. And
well,
so
it's a good thing they don't do that now. So
well, it is. The violence we can mark our progress by acknowledging that the violence of governments is far more subtle these days.
Right,
far
exactly.
More the question that you asked was my own role, Shruti. My own role is primarily as an administrator. We have a president on each continental organization, North America, Asia, Europe. And I liaise with these people. I'm a sounding board, and I'm also the founder of the Institute.
Fantastic. So now that being said, you were mentioning how the Gold Standard Institute is all about unadulterated, values of gold. Now, similarly, something that has come in recent years is the whole concept of Bitgold. What do you think of the potential for electronic-based gold-backed currencies, such as Bitgold, as a step in the right direction towards helping to meet the mandate and goals of the Gold Standard Institute?
I think it's a great step in the right direction. We live in the age of electronic transactions, and hopefully that's not going to go away anytime soon. I would make a couple of points, which is that I would personally far prefer it if instead of calling it a gold-backed currency, you called it a gold-redeemable currency, because, you know, the issue is it redeemable for gold, not is it backed by gold. There's a lot of talk. I notice the gossip columns in the internet are a lot of talk for a long time now about China producing a gold-backed currency and now Russia producing a gold-backed currency. Those currencies will be just as worthless as the fiat currencies that we have now, a backing that is locked away in government vaults and completely inaccessible to the people.
And is that because it's, like you said, it's not accessible to the people? It's not. Would you say it's not because it's not transparent?
No, because it's literally not accessible. The gold is locked away in government vaults. You cannot go into a bank and hand over your currency or redeem your digital currency, as with Bitgold, and get gold back for it.
Right.
It just means that it's backed by it. And that's a very tenuous connection. It's a legislative connection passed in a parliament, and it can be just as easily reversed as we saw in 1971 under Nixon. Gold backed, it doesn't mean anything. Gold redeemable is a completely different ballgame, and we support anything, any currency, whether digital or otherwise, that is redeemable for gold. And from all I understand about Bitgold, it certainly is redeemable for gold, and therefore, yes, we certainly support Bitgold and any other cryptocurrency.
Now, that being said, do you think that gold redeemable would be a better way of, I guess, instituting democracy in countries?
I definitely do. Not necessarily instituting democracy in countries, but maintaining democracies in the countries that it's currently in. You know, it's often said, it's a very common statement that governments can't print gold, and that's absolutely true, but the ramifications of that are not entirely understood by everybody sometimes. In the 19th century, the tendency was for taxpayers, voters, to vote for those politicians who promised to spend the least.
Right, right.
They knew that every expenditure was going to come directly out of their pockets because governments can't print gold. Whereas in the 20th century, post-1914, when gold was withdrawn from circulation, the tendency came to be and has grown stronger and stronger that people will vote for the governments who promise to spend the most. The difference is profound. And it became apparent many decades ago that democracy cannot survive without a return to honest money.
So it's a payment system at the heart. It's free payments. Who doesn't like that? But it's using a form factor in gold that over time, if history repeats itself, and we're talking about 6,000 years of history here, should significantly and markedly empower your life.
So now going back in history a little bit, then how has, you know, the use of gold been in history in the past? Obviously it's not as prevalent as it is now, even though Bitgold is something that's coming out, and so is what's happening with the Gold Standard Institute. What was happening in the past? Would you be able to kind of maybe elaborate or give us an example of how gold was used in the past?
Yes. If you'll excuse me for one moment here, Shruti, I need to take off my hat as president of the Gold Standard Institute and put on my hat as the author of the book Dawn of Gold, which I've just written, because I have a fairly controversial view in this area, which you're about to get your ears beaten.
Fantastic.
And, which is that I never did. I studied economics for about 6 years fairly intently, and I never did accept the two origins, the conventional origins of money. One theory states, which was proposed by Knapp, a deservedly obscure German economist in my opinion, who proposed that it was invented by governments, which is completely absurd because governments have never invented anything useful in their whole existence, certainly not as useful and important as money. I think that one can be dispensed with without further ado. The second theory is far more plausible, and it took me a long while to get to the bottom of it. The second theory, of course, is the Mengerian theory that money evolved from the most marketable good. In other words, it evolved over a period of thousands of years with people coming to an agreement of which was the best good to exchange for other goods, which was the most in-demand good and easily transferable good in the marketplace. That was gold. Therefore, it was the most marketable good. Therefore, it became money. That always seemed to me to be questionable. I didn't make it wrong, but I held it in the back of my mind in the pending file to be examined when I had more time. Well, I began to write the book 4 years ago, and I had more time. I made more time. I cancelled everything else that I was doing apart from my presidential role and began researching the book. And the writing of the book began by reading vast volumes, going back and back and back, trying to trace the origins of gold in the marketplace. And I don't believe anybody else had ever done that. I don't believe still that anyone else has ever done that, because what I found was a very simple story. Gold emerged into the marketplace at one precise point in time which was circa 1500 BC in Egypt. And in the New Kingdom, Egypt, there was this enormous peak of prosperity, which has been unsatisfactorily explained by the archaeologists, that none of them could come up with a good reason why there was this sudden huge burst of prosperity. And from there, within a few hundred years, it had spread across the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians emerged from obscure fishing villages to become a maritime trading force famous to this day, as were the Minoans. And a few hundred years after that, the Greek civilization emerged, which is still famous 2,500, 3,000 years later. So it was not an evolvement over thousands of years. It emerged at one particular place and time in history and took off like a horse from the starting gate. So, and the resultant prosperity in Egypt and the Mediterranean area was just terrific. It was unprecedented in human history. For the first time in history, ordinary Egyptians who had lived in mud huts infested with mosquitoes on meager rations provided by the pharaoh suddenly had access to trade, and you see this emergence of maritime, not military fleets, but trading fleets of boats taking off around. And anyway, everyone got very prosperous, and everyone was so happy. And the next major evolvement is a very important one, because at this point they were using crude beaten gold of indeterminate weight and fineness. Circa 560 BC in Lydia, and I'm sure most people know this, the Lydians produced the first known weight and fineness of gold and silver. And coins, of course. Now, they weren't actually the round coins that we know today. They were actually pellets that were then hit with a hammer to get the whatever was on there, the lion with the sun on its nose. And Herodotus, the famous Greek historian, famously referred to the Lydians as the nation of shopkeepers, because they were, and the significance of that is there had been no shops. Until you had a known weight and fineness of gold, i.e. money, there could be no shops. You can't take a herd of goats or some salted fish along to a shop and get a loaf of bread. It's going to be a very difficult transaction. And then Lydia was overrun by Darius the Persian, and the Persians marched all over the then known world and took not only the concept of money with them, but, and that was the good part of it, the negative part of it was they took with them the concept that money was deservedly and rightfully a monopoly of governments. And we have lived under that ever since.
So with that being said, what sort of characteristics about gold is it that would make it as a good form of currency in our society, in our financial system today? A
number. It's firstly that it's fungible, and I need to explain that because it draws blank faces with a lot of people. Fungible simply means that it's the same as all other gold. You can have one piece of gold here, and if it's 1 ounce of 0.99 gold, it is the same as any other ounce of 0.99 gold. It doesn't matter where it comes from, it's all the same quality. Unlike things like wheat and coffee, which have variable qualities, gold is fungible. It's also durable, it's also divisible. And a point which I only thought of recently, although I did mention it in the book, but I didn't actually lay enough stress on it. Another enormous virtue of gold as money is that it's easy to hide from governments. And that is a terrific advantage. But underneath all this is gold's stability of value. None of those things would matter were gold not of stable value. It is that stability of value that allows it to be the measure of value in the marketplace, or to be more specific, the measure of each individual's perception of value in the marketplace. And underneath even that, or maybe growing above that, over the thousands of years, we have the indisputable fact that there is the worldwide agreement that gold is money. There was a terrific instance of that in Zimbabwe quite recently, and I think most people can remember the collapse of the Zim dollar under Zimbabwe and his central banker Gideon Gono, where they totally degraded the dollar till it was worth nothing. Within 1 week, gold had re-emerged as the money of the marketplace. And I don't think for one moment that many of those Zimbabwean villagers had degrees in economics, but they knew that gold was money. In fact, I suspect these days that you need a degree in economics to not know that gold is money.
Right. Now, lastly, what I wanted to ask you was, what is the importance of having a sort of a gold standard? Why is it important that we have a gold standard?
You know, the benefits of any concept can be assessed, can be determined by answering one simple question: does it work? And gold has proved conclusively over 2,500 years, I beg your pardon, 3,500 years, that it very much does work. Wherever we have had circulating gold, we have had prosperity. To take, for example, the most recent period of circulating gold, which was the 19th century, the classical gold standard. Now, it wasn't an ideal gold standard because there was a lot of unbacked paper circulating. It actually wasn't redeemable. It was, providing everybody didn't go to the bank at the same time. However, it was circulating gold, and it was a heck of a lot better than the situation we have today. And in that time, we had, for the first time in history, the rise of a middle class. We talk about the middle class now and accept it as a fait accompli. Of course there's a middle class. Well, there wasn't. Not until the classical gold standard. There was no middle class. There were lords and nobles and earls. There was the 19th century version of the 1%, and there were the rest. And the wealth gap between them was absolutely vast. We also had the emergence of schools for working class parents or for their children. This had never been before. Sure, Harrow and Eton existed for the 1%, but there were no schools for working class people. And the emergence of the world's first charities began in the 19th century under gold. The Red Cross, the Salvation Army, what's it called, St. Bernardo's Homes for Orphans. These are all still existing big charities, and they emerged under the 19th century gold standard. It was a period of huge increase in the standard of living. The savings, I don't have the figures here, the statistics, unfortunately, and home ownership was another part of that. Because they were earning in a money that held a stable value, they were able to save, and they were able to save to ensure their own retirement years so that they didn't starve to death.
Right.
And they were able to buy homes for the first time again in human history. There have been no private home ownerships other than hovels.
Well, Philip, thank you so much for being here with us at Cliff Q. I think it's very important that we understand what BitGold is, as well as what happens at the Gold Standard Institute. I think that if we are to understand how we could use it maybe as a potential form of currency, it's important to understand how it benefits us in society. So thank you very much for being here on Cliff Q Notes and explaining to us what the Gold Standard Institute is, as well as your thoughts on BitGold. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Shruti, and it's important to stress that it is only gold that will get us out of this dreadful situation that we're in. It is only gold that will allow us to handle the terrible debt that the world has incurred. And thank you very much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure.